So by this point, I'm sure most of you have already seen the fight with Vergil Ortiz, if not the whole fight. Not that it was very long, but if you didn't see the whole fight at the very at the very least, you ended up seeing the stoppage and the controversy that surrounds it, right? But just I'm gonna give a quick recap, just to bring everybody up to speed so that we're all on the same page. Vergil Ortiz comes out in the first round, starts looking good, landed some shots on Lawson. Looks like he has him hurt, gets him up against the ropes, starts throwing some punches. Tony Weeks jumps in and stops the fight. I do it. It felt like it was just that crazy. Right, immediately the crowd starts booing. The announcing team is flabbergasted. They can't understand what's going on. Everybody's kind of baffled. It looked crazy. We're watching it through in the replay just in case maybe that we missed something. Just in case there was some kind of heavy shot in there that the man who was actually closest to the action, which the referee is, if he was able to see something that we didn't see. So we're watching the replay back and no, turns out it was exactly like we thought. There was no significant shot landed whatsoever. There was no reason that fight should have been stopped. Yes, Vergil Ortiz landed some punches that looked like he had his man hurt. It was the first round though, dude. Like there was no punishment accumulated throughout the fight. This is a professional boxing match. There was no reason to believe that was a moment to stop the fight. You know, you're supposed to be looking at a guy's eyes, seeing if they're tracking. You're supposed to see how his legs look. You're supposed to see how his arms look. At any point did he get hit so hard that he was no longer intelligently defending himself. Right? It doesn't matter how you kind of measure this or how you want to look at it. At the end of the day, you come away with the decision that was a ridiculous stoppage. Absolutely horrible. And I get it. Sometimes guys make mistakes. But then we go back and we look at what happened with Rolly Romero and Ishmael Barroso last year. I was sitting in press row for that fight. Again, horrible stoppage. Right? Tony Weeks jumps in there, dude. And it was just blatant. And again, and it was the same type of thing, right? We had the broadcast team that didn't understand what was going on. They didn't understand why a stoppage happened. We had the crowd who was booing them right away. All of these things going on. So now we're starting to see this pattern. And guys jumped on Tony Weeks almost immediately. You started to see things online, people questioning his capabilities, people saying that he needs to be, his license needs to be pulled, saying that he needs to resign. I actually saw somebody that was questioning whether or not the man was fixing fights. That's how far it came. These outcomes were so egregious they were questioning whether or not the man was fixing fights. And then all of a sudden, we see this post. Then all of a sudden, Tony Weeks, or at least this account that says Tony Weeks, that's not where I saw it. I saw it actually, I followed Jamel Herring. That's where I first saw it. But he was actually retweeting somebody, everything boxing. And what Tony Weeks came out here and said, and I'll just read it. What the public didn't know, that prior to the fight, they did a brain scan on him. I'm assuming he means Lawson. And it came up that he had an aneurysm. And they did a test again, and the same aneurysm came up. Another doctor was brought in and gave him the same examination, and he tested negative for the aneurysm, so they cleared him to fight. Man, those are heavy allegations. Heavy allegations to come out and say that the commission license this man. I mean, you're talking about a cover-up that's huge. You're talking about a man who's got a medical condition that 100% will not allow you to get cleared to get a license for a professional boxing match. And either we're talking about the doctors, we're talking about the promoters, we're talking about the commission, we're talking about different entities that are covering this thing up all to move this event forward. Tony Weeks knows that it's going on and goes out there and does the only thing that he's able to do to protect that man, which is stop this fight just egregiously early. Now, as soon as this statement came out, you started to immediately see a couple narratives take shape. One of them was, Tony Weeks is the man. Look at what's going on here. Tony Weeks went out and saved this dude, and we all owe him an apology for jumping on him so fast and condemning him for what he did. And at the exact same time, we started to see another narrative take shape, which is people saying, Tony Weeks is making this story up, man. He is on some garbage. This dude is doing this to cover himself. He's going to cost himself his career. And then, you know what, I'll actually add one more that I saw out there with some people suggesting, it doesn't matter what the situation is, this man should have kept his mouth shut because now all he's going to do is get himself in more hot water. And that's for sure, 100%, he's got himself in more hot water. Because I'll tell you what, if this was a true story, if this is actually what he said is actually true, and the allegations that he's making are correct and factual, obviously the people that were behind it, obviously the people that were covering this up and pushing this whole thing forward, they're not going to be too happy with that man. They're going to be upset. You have to imagine that they're going to do whatever they can to get back at him in some way, shape, or form. Then let's go the other route. If it's not true, if he's making this up, because he stopped this fight egregiously early for whatever reason, and he wants to cover up his own actions by pointing the finger at somebody else. The people that he's pointing the finger at are pretty big players in the game, man. They're going to be pretty upset about the whole thing. So either way, this is going to be a rough ride for Tony Weeks going forward. Now, if he's out there and this is true and he's really doing the right thing, you have to imagine that he knew that what's coming for him. You have to imagine that he understands there's going to be that blowback, that there's going to be people who are going to be unhappy with him. They're going to come after him, and he's probably mentally prepared himself for that. But if this dude was, covering up for his own actions, if he was in such a bad place that he went out there and consciously stopped that fight that early, and then now he's going out there and he's covering up for it by saying something like this, man, that would be insane. Tony Weeks at one point was one of the most respected referees in the game, doing the biggest fights you can imagine. Nobody questioned him. Nobody said that he was unfair. Nobody said that he was doing things that were unprofessional. You never heard a bad thing. He was called upon for the biggest fights. So to fall from that top in your profession all the way down to where he would have to be if he was making up these stories, man, boxing is crazy. Boxing is crazy, man. It is like a real life soap opera at times. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out in the wash on how all this plays out. I mean, what do you guys think about this? What's your take on it? I mean, the one thing that we know for an absolute fact is that fight was stopped ridiculously early. Right? That's one thing that's beyond question. That's one thing that we can't doubt. That's the one fact that we have to go off of. After that, we've got some stories at this point. I imagine hopefully the truth is going to come to light and sooner rather than later in some way, shape, or form. But what do you guys make of all this? What did you think of the fight? What did you think of the stoppage? And what do you think about all these stories that are coming out now? Let me know.